Hey guys, how you doing? It's SquanU007 and time for another round of smashing the Xbox One X. Because why not? And I'm going to use the people who are promoting the Xbox One X the hardest. No, not Crap Gamer. No, not Zaire or the rest of the other people who are just completely turning a blind eye to the whole Xbox One X. No, instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at DigitalFoundry, because obviously we need to understand. We need a baseline for a lot of the fuckery that's going on. So let's go ahead and get to that baseline of fuckery, shall we? Let us begin. The video that starts it all, so we can have this baseline for everyone.
When we think about the future of Xbox, we think about removing barriers.
For me and for the fans and for the developers, Xbox has always meant innovation and the latest technology, and delivering the world's most powerful console is something we absolutely want to do.
This is the console that developers asked us to build. They wanted a console that had no boundaries, had no limitations.
And that technology component to us is what we really need to make our vision and our art come alive.
When I saw the specs of this thing, I'm like, wow, I got through to they're really going for it.
Wow.
They're not holding anything back.
Just wow. They're not holding anything back.
The SoC 6 teraflops of computing capability to be able to handle 4K resolutions. Gamers are going to get the most powerful graphics processor that's been put into a game console to date.
It's going to make developers happy, it's going to make gamers happy, because they're going to get a very powerful GPU out of it.
The highest res, the best frame rate, no compromises.
No compromises, guys. The best frame rate.
You get 4K gaming, true 4K resolution. I can't wait to see what developers actually do with all that horsepower in the box.
4K gaming,
we
true
can
4K.
60 hertz. We can render fully uncompressed pixels. These are the highest quality pixels that anybody is seeing. And what we're able to do now is bring that to the console player.
Yeah, man. What they're able to do is just bring the highest quality pixels to the console players. Highest quality pixels to the console players. You know, just the highest quality pixels to the console player. Let's see these high quality pixels in action, shall we? Let's do that.
Xbox One X tends to operate between 1440p up to around 1620p. Yeah, that's right, not a huge upgrade over PS4 Pro.
Whoa! That's not true 4K. What the fuck? Where's the highest quality pixels at? The highest quality pixels. This is your highest quality pixels? This is it? This is your highest quality pixels. This is your highest quality pixels. Project Cars 2? Really? Dropping the ball here, man. You're making Xbox look bad.
Actually, in less demanding scenes where there's little going on, we can see the engine hit the upper bounds of that, coming close to or hitting 1620p. But a lot of the time I actually noticed that the game was rendering out 1440p, whether that be during highly stressful stormy weather conditions to at the starting grid of this particular circuit here during clear daytime skies. Image quality here just isn't a huge upgrade over Pro, and often the two do look kind of similar.
But that can't be right, because obviously Xbox One has to have the highest pixels, right? I mean, there's no possible reason for this. Somebody's fucking up, right? But let's go with frame rate. Actually let's keep going. Let's see what happens.
Sharper, clearer presentation. So the boost in visual quality is kind of mixed then, but what about performance? This was one area where PS4 Pro handed in a massive upgrade over base PS4 and Xbox One consoles, giving us a much better lock to 60 frames per second. In fact, if we look at PS4 Pro in less demanding scenes, the game has no trouble hitting that 60 FPS target at all. And well, for the most part on Xbox One X, in similar conditions that's also true. With around 17 cars in a race, along with weather conditions such as rain and snow, both consoles managed to deliver 60 FPS pretty effortlessly. However, in more demanding moments, whether that be increased weather conditions or more cars bunched up on the track, then PS4 Pro actually has the advantage. I noticed there was slightly more in the way of frame rate drops and tearing on Xbox One X even outside of stress points. They don't happen too often, but occasionally I did get a tad distracted by the odd bit of tearing in areas where the game maintained a smooth 60 FPS on the Pro. By and large though, I think that regular gameplay outside of stress tests holds up well on both systems. Pro does have a slight advantage, but on the flip side, you do get a slight increase in resolution on Xbox One at points, along with slightly more detailed scenery and improved effects. However, when we move...
So, if that's the case, then here's the problem. Why not just focus on frame rate and then bump the visuals until it's oh wait, that's right, because it has to be uncompromised. But this looks pretty fucking compromised, doesn't it? Look at that screen, Terry. Look at that red lining right there. Holy shit. But you know, maybe it's just Project Cars. So fuck Project Cars, right? Because obviously Xbox is the best box. Let's see Call of Duty. Let's look at that. Obviously Call of Duty is going to be great, right?
With the most obvious one is resolution. Basically, with PlayStation 4 Pro, we were looking at dynamic 4K using checkerboard rendering. So obviously in situations where there isn't much in terms of load, we get up to that checkerboard 2160p, but it does kind of dip below in like more demanding scenes. Whereas for Xbox One X, the checkerboard rendering's been removed, so we're looking at dynamic resolution but without the sort of temporal reconstruction component.
Wait a minute. But that's not true 4K then. What you're doing is using dynamic resolution, which means the resolution is fluctuating back and forth to make sure that the frame rate stays at a high frame rate. It's kind of like how you would do 60 frames per second. But that's not dynamic resolution then. And what's up with these videos being in quote-unquote 4K if it's not 4K, right? And I don't care if I have to look 800% closer to the screen. I don't care about that. I mean, I want it to be the best, right?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I wasn't really too fussed about the checkerboarding on PS4 Pro because this is one of the kind of most filmic, post-heavy games that we've ever seen, and it just kind of literally blurred into the presentation, I think. But you're right, I mean, there is no checkerboarding on this one. Seems to be running at the same ballpark resolution, and so there is a little bit of extra clarity because it's actual native rendering as opposed to checkerboarding.
Yeah, actually that's not native rendering then. What it's doing is still dynamic resolution, which means it's scaling back the resolution at some point. But, you know, you make sure you get those micro dollars, fucking Rich. You make sure you get those micro dollars, Rich from Rich from DigitalFoundry. You just do that, man. You keep it going. But, you know, what about performance, right? Performance got to be up, right? It can't be dropping performance,
Pro version
right?
held up really well there.
Yeah, Pro was fantastic in that respect. You know, there's very little in the way of frame rate drops, and when you did get one, it was 1 FPS, 2 FPS. It wasn't really noticeable outside of one or two scenes where there was sort of streaming going on. But going into the Xbox One X version, I noticed that things wasn't quite as smooth when I was playing it. Things like the opening firefight, for instance, I noticed a bit of screen tearing creeping in. And yeah, the action just didn't feel quite as slick. You know, you didn't get that complete 60 FPS lock when I guess I was kind of expecting it to a point, seeing what we had on Pro.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, maybe they've just pushed too hard on here, but fundamentally, this game does have dynamic resolution scaling just like the Pro version. So in theory, we shouldn't really be seeing this. We should be seeing the resolution drop in order to sustain the target 60 frames per second, which Infinity Ward back in the day with the original versions, with the Pro version, they were so determined to get that lock. They did a fantastic job there, and I'm looking at some of the stutters and whatnot that we're seeing here. Bit disappointing.
Yeah, it is a bit disappointing. It is. But, you know, fuck Call of Duty, right? Because it's not Halo. because you know that's all I hear from Xbox, man. It's Halo or nothing, man. It's got to be Halo. It's got to be Gears. So you know, Call of Duty, Activision, they're salty. So fuck them, right? Fuck them in the ass. So let's go to LA Noire, a very, very old game from the 360 and the PS3, right? Let's see how this works in on the Xbox One X, because obviously it's got to be better.
To wrap up then, it's worth taking a quick look at Xbox One X. We've so far used the base PS4 to show the game running at max settings compared to Switch. To top that, Xbox One X does one very obvious thing to better this. You get a boost to a full 3840 by 2160. Now the game still runs at 30 FPS and textures and shadows are the same compared to a base PS4, but it all holds up surprisingly well at 4K. Paired with an obligatory increase in texture filtering quality, it's a fairly bare bones vote of support for the console, but effective. A secondary plus to this release is a change in the way ambient occlusion is rendered on Xbox One X. It lightens the effect across the scene and bizarrely brings it more in line with the effect on Switch. Otherwise it's the same deal, and outside of PC, inevitably this is the best way to enjoy the game on console. But that's all I have for today. If you did find this analysis...
Oh my god, so we can finally do it on like a 15-year-old game. Xbox, you did it. You could run 4K on a 15-year-old game. It's still 30 frames per second for some reason, but you know, it's something, right? And I'm not even going to look at that cancer at the bottom called the comment section. Let's just move to the next one, right? Let's move to the next one. Hitman. Okay, this is going to be promising, right? Because it says 4K. Let's do this.
So why offer these two modes then? Well, that should be pretty clear. It's all about frame rate stability. With the high quality mode, you can toggle between a capped or uncapped frame rate, and by using the 30 FPS cap, Hitman offers a mostly stable 30 FPS experience at native 4K, while uncapping it provides somewhat less stable performance overall. The high frame rate mode, however, removes the option to cap the frame rate at 30 and instead aims for a full-on 60 frames per second, and the leap is quite significant. What's interesting here is that we can now compare the native 4K mode with an unlocked frame rate against the 1440p mode and see how the two stack up. The high frame rate mode then offers precisely that. It's not locked at 60 FPS mind you, but it's very close to achieving it in most scenes. The native 4K mode in comparison then falls below this level of performance as you'd expect, and instead sits on par with the original Xbox One and PS4 release at 1080p. Considering that we're talking about 4 times the resolution here, that gives you an idea of where the console falls. Keep in mind though that this version of Hitman does include improved visuals and lighting over that version that we tested back in 2016.
Oh yeah, it does. Improved visuals and lightings that all consoles got as well. So yeah, I guess it would. Here's the thing though. And the frame rate limiter, which is for 4K, I get it, but that's not 4K 60. And that's exactly what we're looking at, because they said 60 hertz. Each hertz is a frame, 60 hertz, 60 frames per second. I'm not seeing it. Why am I not seeing 60 frames per second from the 4K side? Okay, we're seeing the performance version at 1080p, because that's what that is. And actually, not only can you see it as 1080p versus the native 4K, you can actually pick it out from this steel. Look at the house. You see the actual detail in the house in the 4K side versus the 1080p side right there? Look at the geometry of the window. Look at the trees itself. You can see the geometry. It's fucking, it's, and I'm not taking away from the Xbox here. I'm just saying 4K unlocked, uncapped frame rates is kind of looking kind of jittery, and you probably want to stick to 30 frames per second. But that's compromised, isn't it? Doesn't that mean that it's totally compromised? Yeah, it is. It's totally fucking compromised. Is that the best pixels? I don't know. I don't fucking know. Let's go to the next one, because obviously something's wrong, right? Hitman just didn't do a good job, right? It just didn't do a great job. Maybe This Call of Duty would. Maybe let's just hope for the best, right?
Hey
HDR,
everyone, Richard
baby.
from DigitalFoundry here, and this video, sponsored by Xbox, is a compilation of our favourite HDR.
Oh, wait a minute. This video is sponsored by Xbox? Oh. Oh, that actually might be bad. Hold on. This video is sponsored by Xbox. Huh. You know what? I can't show this video because I think it might be way too biased. Because if it's a video sponsored by Xbox, I don't know. I don't know, DigitalFoundry. It tells me where you're lying at right here. It tells me where your bread is buttered. So let's not do that. Let's just move on, right? So Battlefront, right? 4K. Obviously, this is going to be full fat 4K, uncompromised.
Set to output at 2160p, and well, image quality is a good place to start. Unlike the PC version, which can be locked at a specific resolution, both consoles operate using dynamic resolution scaling, and that.
Whoa. No, that's no. That's compromised. You can't do that. It can't dynamically scale resolution. If it's a 4K console, it should be 4K. The PS4 Pro, if it's saying it's a 4K console, it should never fucking dynamic scale. That's fake 4K. That's faux K.
That means that pixel counts are adjusted according to rendering load. The idea here is to reduce resolution in order to better hit 60 frames per second, giving you a smoother experience. And there's a sizable gap between Pro and Xbox One X here. Peak pixel counts on Sony system appear to top out at 1440p, but of course the resolution does vary. We've noticed around 1296p in various scenes, going upwards to that 1440p mark in less demanding areas. It's an upgrade over the base PS4 game that tops out at 1080p, but at the same time it's not quite high enough to give you that 4K presentation. It falls short in that respect, but I still think it looks pretty good given the use of temporal anti-aliasing, ensuring that we get a smooth presentation, even though it can appear soft at times. Meanwhile, when we move over to Xbox One X, there's a considerable upgrade here. Resolution tops out at a full fat 2160p, but of course, with dynamic scaling in play, things do drop below that. Battlefront 2 is a pretty difficult game to pixel count, with the temporal anti-aliasing in play along with a ton of post-processing effects. But from what we've seen so far, Xbox One X roughly goes down to around 1800p, all the way up to 2160p 4K. Image quality is excellent here, and to be honest, I'd say that it's more than enough to pass for native 4K.
Yeah, except there's one problem with that. You see, you can't pass for native fucking 4K. There's no such thing as passing for native 4K. That's like a child who gets an F in spelling. I don't pass you because you have a fucking F. I don't. Oh, you passed. No, you failed. It's a failure. The console failed at producing 4K standard just straight out the box. It's giving you patches of 4K. How does that work? Why are people not mad at this? Why are people not fucking saying anything about that? Oh, that's right. You don't want to feel bad about your purchase, because Microsoft is not going to refund you a goddamn fucking thing. Oh man, that's just I don't know. Let's keep going.
Fine shadows and the more detailed environment. And yeah, if you're wondering if you're playing at 1080p, then you can achieve 60 frames per second while running at max settings using a GTX 1060, which gives you a great experience if you're not interested in playing on a 4K screen. While if you are targeting 4K, then you're going to need something like a GTX 1080 Ti to ensure you get that 60 FPS lock. And this kind of brings me back round to consoles again.
Nani? No. You know, I was wondering where a lot of these fucking morons were getting this goddamn information from. Sir? You are aware that they're playing at low settings, right? These are low, medium settings. So basically, if I pull up a video that says a 1060 can do this at 4K around 60 frames per second, unlike this game, which is not locked at fucking 60 frames, I believe, this really should look bad on you, right? Frame counter up there, because you can't run this game at 4K with a 1060, right? This so not really demanding fucking game.
They're taking the generator down.
You know, to enjoy this game at 4K. You can't use a 1060. That's insane. In actuality, hold on. I actually might need to go further back. Let's go further back. Let's look at this guy's settings.
The enemy must be. I'm ready.
Let's look at this guy's settings, because I want to see this guy's settings first.
Brigade on alert. That shrieking sound was an enemy vessel crash landing. We're detecting multiple rebel survivors. I expect that.
Let's see. VSync is off. Enable DirectX 12 is off. Filmic is on. Grain film is on. Lens distortion is on. Vertical or full screen refresh rate. That is 4K. Hold on, I need to go back. So what was at the top?
Brigade on alert.
I just want to go out to the top and see what was there.
Crash landing. We're detecting multiple rebel survivors. I expect they'll try to sabotage.
Damn it. I messed up again, didn't I? Let's try this one more time, guys.
Brigade on alert. That shrieking sound was an enemy vessel crash landing. We're detecting multiple rebel survivors.
Brightness. Okay. Nothing to really look at. Huh. Goes up to 60 hertz. Huh, okay.
The rebels at the tractor beam control and generator stations and defend those areas. They'll beam control and generator stations and defend those areas.
UI display mode is at 1080p, not 4K, which is fine. However, the game quality is at 4K. The graphics quality is at low. Advanced settings is everything at low. But yeah, man, you can't enjoy this. You can't enjoy this game at 60 frames per second on like a 1060 or a 1070. You definitely have to fucking shell out and get a fucking 1080 Ti, because 1080s and 1070s and 1060s don't exist in your world.
Get behind me, move it in.
There's no such thing as that, huh? Just no fucking such thing. Stop gassing these fucking peasants up, you idiot.
Basis to get the best experience. It's all about ultra low latency controls and perfectly smooth motion. So we'll kick off with the campaign here, and I have to say the results are generally excellent across both platforms. Now looking at both systems side by side here, it's clear that the Pro does feature slightly more stable performance overall, but when it comes to how this affects gameplay, the difference is pretty minimum, and to be honest, whichever version you play, you're going to get great gameplay from each one. In terms of the Pro, we're obviously getting a presentation that more closely hits 60 FPS. There's the occasional 1 FPS dip or so, but I never picked up on this during gameplay, and the experience felt really smooth and consistent throughout. And to be honest, it's not that far behind on the Xbox One X. Performance does dip a little bit lower, and there's more frequent, smaller frame rate drops, but at the same time, these are pretty minimal. Occasionally you do get some very mild stuttering, but if you're paying attention in the gameplay and not looking for performance drops, then a lot of the time you're unlikely to notice. Sure, it's not quite as good a lock at 60 FPS as PS4 Pro, but I still think the game looks and feels very good to play here, and it's really not a problem.
So there you have it. You have a not 4K game that can't even continue to hold 60 frames per second, while you have a guy who's lying to these people saying that you need a 1080 Ti to enjoy the game in 60 frames per second. While I just showed that a 1060 6 gig paired up with a quad-core i5 literally can keep up with an Xbox. Not even keep up, it actually dismantles it because it doesn't go down below 4K at all, unless you count UI menus. But, you know, whatever, it's uncompromised Xbox, just totally fucking uncompromised, which is crazy. It's like you have a fucking 580 in there. What the fuck are you even on about? It's fucking insane. Insanity. Let's go to Final Fantasy 15. Yet another game.
High mode. Now, in an interview prior to this update, Hajime Tabata, the game's director, suggested that this mode would offer the same resolution as PS4 Pro using checkerboard rendering. In reality, that doesn't quite appear to be the case. For one thing, based on our pixel counts, Final Fantasy 15 does not appear to operate at a stable resolution. Depending on the scene, results can be all over the place. In one shot, while looking at the sky for instance, we got 3360 by 1890. A nice increase over the original claim. If we lower the camera then, we see 3072 by 1728, which is a match for the original quote. But then you move closer to the mini-mart and it drops to 2816 by 1584. In fact, in some other scenes, we see drops down to 1440p, and worst case, it can drop as low as 1360p.
That looks very compromised, and this is, of course, Final Fantasy. But maybe Square Enix is just a bunch of fucks who hate the fucking Xbox, right? You could probably say that, but that's still not 4K 60 frame, or yeah, that's not 4K or 60.
Couple of hours, I was extremely impressed. Image quality is excellent in comparison to the Pro.
Let's see the performance.
Frame rate is steady, and yes, the game is free of frame pacing issues. That's perhaps the biggest improvement of all. No matter which mode you use, the game runs using an adaptive VSync solution and thus does not exhibit any of these bad frame pacing issues present on the PS4 Pro when using the high mode. When placed side by side with the Pro then, you can see the difference for yourself. The frame time graph there on the left is full of inconsistencies on the Pro side, while the Xbox One X is completely stable. Both offer a 30 FPS update during this sequence, but the X provides a more fluid experience due to correct frame persistence. So all is good then, right? Well, unfortunately there's two issues with the X version which kinda took me by surprise. The first one centers on actual performance drops in key areas. The first major city you visit, Lestallum, is a great example of this. It's a gorgeous environment, and on Xbox One X, the frame rate does not hold steady while walking around this central area. This was the first time I ran into any performance issues at all while playing the game on Xbox One X, and I was kind of surprised by it. If we bring in the PS4 Pro version for comparison, you can clearly see that while it does suffer from bad frame pacing, the average frame rate is higher overall on Sony's console. The high mode on Xbox One X simply struggles to maintain solid performance in this area. Now it's true that the Xbox One X is rendering more pixels here, so the load is definitely higher, but you wouldn't expect it to drop this sharply. And if it...
At that point, I actually can't say that. And you know what? I'm going to give it to Xbox on this one. The frame rate is at 30 frames per second. Again, that's still compromised. But for that scene itself, I think something else is at play. I don't think that that's actually the Xbox's fault. I think it's just fault with the coding itself for some reason. So I will give it a pass just on that.
If it was just this one area, it wouldn't be so bad, but these drops can pop up during normal gameplay as well. This area alongside the lake here is rather demanding, for instance. Between the multitude of enemies and the water effects sloshing around, the frame rate starts to take a sharp dive into the low 20s and sometimes even into the teens. This doesn't really seem right at all. Of course, once you finish the battle, it clears right up and the game is back to a solid 30 frames per second, but it still feels like this shouldn't be happening to this degree. This isn't common enough to ruin the game or anything, but it's not exactly what you would expect from the Xbox One X version. It feels like there is more work to be done. But just when the story seemed simple, another issue came our way. Slowdown that occurs when using sleep mode or by simply having played the game for a long period of time. Here's an example. At some point while running around, the game just started to run like this. The frame rate dropped sharply and remained this way no matter where I wandered. Now I knew that this area had been smooth before, so maybe it was the weather? Well, it was severe enough that I felt compelled to save my game, restart the console, and try again. And you know what? It fixed it. Yep, the same area at the same time suddenly ran without issue, turning in a perfect 30 frames per second. This of course led to me testing more areas to determine which sections have legitimate slowdown and which areas are caused by this potential bug. After a long session, for instance, less of them exhibited more severe slowdown than what I showed before. This previously stable alleyway, for instance, which has no issues hitting 30 FPS normally, unlike the main square which we showed before, was now reduced to this level of performance instead, which is much worse. So how can you tell the difference between actual slowdown and slowdown caused by this potential bug? Well, it seems that the legitimate slowdown will disappear once you leave the offending area. The battle on the lakeside here, for instance, returns to a stable 30 FPS without issue once the enemies have been eliminated. In other scenes, however, the slowdown persists for much longer, which kind of indicates that it's time for a reboot. Needless to say, this is rather strange and disappointing, and does seem to be tied to the usage of sleep mode, but we can't say for sure. Thankfully, there is hope. Square Enix has been very responsive with improving the game based on fan feedback. Many of the changes made occurred after a negative response, so we can only hope that the same thing happens here. The patch is so close to being great, but these few remaining issues take away some of the polish. So, what about the other graphics modes then? Well, the light mode...
Alright, I'm not going to touch the light or the very quote-unquote regular mode that you're going to have, because that's not what we want to see. We want to see the 4K 60 frames per second at the same time. So, as I stated before, I don't think that the frame rate issue was a problem with the Xbox itself, considering how the Pro acts or how the actual regular PS4 acts with this game. So the sleep mode bug they're experiencing, I understand that is not of the system's fault per se. That is faulty code from the game. I will give it that. I will give it that because it does not deserve to be criticized for something that Square Enix was too lazy to fucking fix. However, the resolution, no, that is totally the fucking console's fault. I'm sorry. Let's go to the next game, Titanfall. So I remember, I don't know if I did a Titanfall video, but it ran like utter shit before. So let's see if the improvements have happened for Titanfall.
Things have improved, so the minimum resolution is 1440p on the X, and that can go up to 1800p as we move into a less demanding part.
Okay, but that is in this area of gameplay, because obviously it still has the dynamic superscaler, which in the really light scenes still takes you beyond 4K resolution.
It does, right, so we're still looking at those boosts all the way and beyond 4K. It just means that in areas where previously the resolution was dropping really far below, it's much higher.
Right, okay. So when you're talking about the 1800p there, that's pretty much how high you can expect to go in a really busy campaign scene.
So far that's what I've seen, yeah. It kind of varies between sort of around the 1440p mark all the way up to 1800p, but it does, yeah, go up quite high, quite close to 4K when you're in shootouts. You're no longer sort of getting a prolonged drop to 1296p anymore.
Which is good. Okay, so they patched it. However, that's not 4K. The Xbox One cannot run Titanfall at 4K. That is sad. But let's see how the performance handles. It's got to handle good, right? I mean, obviously
improved over the pre-patched version, but it's now more stable than PlayStation 4 Pro.
There we go.
That's good news, isn't it?
Yeah, it was quite unexpected considering we are getting, that extra boost in resolution, the improved geometry, and now performance is more smoothed out overall. So it definitely changes things.
Yeah, I mean, I played this game over the weekend, the patched version, to see what was going on there, do some capture, and I was really impressed with it. I mean, it really does look like a big night and day improvement over what we had before, which in turn was significantly better than the base Xbox One version. But I think the concern was that it didn't quite live up to its billing. I mean, there was all this talk about 6K maximum resolution before launch. And yeah, having spoken to Respawn about this, there's quite a lot of changes under the hood. For example, depth of field, color grading, quite a few of the post effects are actually locked at 2160p. And yeah, those would have been locked at 1440p on PlayStation 4 Pro because that's the top end resolution of that version. So there is actually quite a lot of differences behind the scenes. We have that, we have the increased geometry settings as well, pretty much on par with the top end PC version there. But, I guess in the final analysis, what we're looking at is kind of more of an incremental upgrade to the PlayStation 4 Pro version as opposed to any serious competition for the maxed out PC experience.
Of course, because you're never going to get to the maxed out. The maxed out PC experience is 16K. Actually, I think it's actually beyond that. But no, you're never going to hit that. Not with a console. A console can't do it. It'll fucking burn itself to death. There's just nothing you can do about that. I'm sorry. There's nothing you can do about that.
Experience than Pro, but really if you want to get a much bigger upgrade that's going to benefit your 4K screen, PC is kind of the way to go there.
There you go. Oh, you want to hear the rest?
A lot more than just resolution with the enhanced effects and whatnot.
Yeah.
There you go. See, it doesn't matter how you're gonna try to fucking frame it. You guys don't have a PC. You have an Xbox One. You do. Now let's go ahead and go to the newest Call of Duty because fuck it. Let's do the first look.
Duty titles. World War II operates using dynamic resolution scaling. In this case, we're looking at scaling across the horizontal axis. That means both platforms hand in 2160p when looking at the vertical pixel counts.
God, that's just blurry.
Horizontally, this number varies depending on rendering load complexity. Essentially, those pixel counts are reduced in order to allow the engine to target 60 frames per second, reducing frame rate drops at the expense of introducing a bit more softness in the presentation. Now with temporal anti-aliasing in play, it's quite difficult to get exact lock on pixel counts, and indeed we'll be taking a closer look at this when we compare the game against the PC version. But for now we can say that PS4 Pro is running at a consistently lower resolution than Xbox One X, resulting in a slightly softer image on the Sony platform. While on the One X, resolution tends to stick much closer to a full-fat 4K.
Closer to? But that's not a full-fat 4K now, is it? I love how they keep saying, oh, it goes closer to. In reality, closer to is still not 4K. And the 4K that you're trying to propel is the same bullshit they pulled on Killzone Shadowfall. Yeah, it's 1080p long ways, but not horizontal. So then you have this crazy blur as you saw in the beginning. Because at 4K you should not see a blur like that on his face. At all. That was just ugly blur. And I have no fucking clue why the fuck they would do that. Except for when they said, we are trying to, quote unquote, make sure it's at 60 frames per second. So let's go ahead and check the performance out.
Consistent 60 frames per second gameplay, then both versions mostly deliver it in spades. The game feels crisp, quick and very responsive, and it really allows you to get fully immersed in the action. There's very little in the way of distractions to take you out of the experience. Even in larger action scenes where there's plenty of particle effects and explosions, the engine tends to hold to its 60 FPS target rather well. Perhaps the only thing that occasionally gets in the way is some odd stuttering. I primarily noticed this when moving from one area to the next, or when the game was loading up the next set piece. Essentially, it appears that streaming could be the cause here, with the game constantly pooling in data to fill its large maps. And as a result, it looks like sometimes this can't be streamed in quickly enough, resulting in some momentary hitches. From our testing so far, it appears that these stutters appear slightly more often on Xbox One. But that said, things are quite variable where streaming is concerned, and it could simply be down to differences in how we played the game. Even so, this is perhaps the only area of Call of Duty World War II that needs improvement, and hopefully this is tackled in a future patch. But aside from that, both versions deliver a great experience that mostly hits a solid 60 frames per second. So it's a promising start for the game on PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, and we're intrigued to see what extras the PC version brings. How close does the Xbox One X version get to delivering the ultra high-end PC experience?
Well, that depends on what the fuck Activision does. If they try to pull that bullshit that they're known for, which is not allowing you to adjust your settings properly. But more likely, obviously, PC is going to win that regardless. But with the Xbox and the PS4 Pro on performance, it looks about similar to me. You do have random drops because of loading. Should I count that? I probably shouldn't count that, because these are just random drops because of loading. But in actuality, no, I actually should count this because of your fucking RAM. Your RAM is GDDR5. Yeah, I'm counting it. No, you both fail at this, and it doesn't really matter. But again, the Xbox is still compromised. Let's go to the next game, shall we?
Into being a true 4K gaming machine really doesn't hold up in this case, and 2560 by 1440 is the typical native resolution on Sony's machine. The good news for Xbox One X is it's shooting much higher in pixel count, and gameplay operates at a peak of 3840 by 2160 where feasible for the engine.
Aw, shit.
In other words, Xbox One X uses
Xbox One has
dynamic
finally did it.
resolution setup, much like PS4 Pro. The only difference? Well,
Wait,
4K
what?
is the maximum value.
Hold
the
on.
upper bounds of how many pixels can be pushed on Microsoft's machine.
Hold on.
1440.
Back up.
The only difference? Well, 4K is the max. Uses a dynamic resolution setup, much like PS4 Pro. The only.
God damn. Another dynamic resolution setup. God fucking damn. Really? It's just. Can the Xbox win? Just. Can it win?
Difference? Well, 4K is the maximum value. The upper bounds of how many pixels can be pushed on Microsoft's machine, while 1440p is the peak resolution possible on PS4 Pro. Okay, so dynamic resolutions on both sides, but just what does that mean to the end result? Well, let's put it this way. A typical in-engine cutscene, where you can match rendering load precisely, shows Xbox One X tends to drop down from 4K more often than PS4 Pro ever drops from 1440p. In fact, 1440p seems like a fairly conservative target, given how rarely I've seen it go lower on PS4 Pro. So let's put it into example. A cutscene with an explosion in the background triggers Xbox One X to drop its pixel output by 10% to 3648 by 2052. Meanwhile, Pro in this case stays at a straight 2560 by 1440. Even so, it's obviously a much clearer image on Microsoft's machine, and despite the more frequent fluctuations in resolution, you still get over twice the number of pixels from the machine in this case. It's a significant advantage. This is how a majority of the game unfolds. Up close, Xbox One X really does look all the better for its flexibility and resolution, though it's remarkable how often it does hold to 4K. This cutscene here, for example, plays out entirely at that top Ultra HD resolution, whereas PS4 Pro sticks it out at 1440p. Tellingly, there is one unique spot where both drop, a particularly gruesome scene with lots of characters on screen. In this case, Xbox One X takes a hit to 2052p once again, but curiously, on PS4 Pro this scene goes to 2432 by 1368. A matching 10% drop in pixels from 1440p. You get the picture. It's impressive stuff, and the payoff is clearly there for Microsoft's choice to go large on GPU processing power and memory bandwidth. There's a limitation to what id Tech 6 can pull off on the machine, as I'll cover later, but in terms of raw image quality comparisons with its closest rival, there's no contest. You want the best looking version of Wolfenstein 2 on console? Get an Xbox One X.
Or you could just take that $500 and get a fucking PC. And I'm not going to stop ever saying that, because what they're literally telling people who have Xboxes is save up $500, get $500, do whatever you have to do to get $500 to get this console upgrade. Because we fucked up in the beginning, so boo fucking who. And you know what? I can't even look at the corporations and say, what are you doing? Because we know that that's exactly what they're doing. It's just fucking sick. And the PS4 Pro is garbage as well. I'm not fucking defending that shit either. But in reality, that's still not real 4K. Or excuse me, let me be clear. It's hitting 4K, but it can't maintain 4K. Therefore, the PC version is better. A PC version with a 1060, which costs less than that fucking console, is way better than what the fuck you're looking at. But let's go ahead and go to performance, because maybe performance is better.
Is a perfect example of that. An area that drops frames on both machines, causing Xbox One X to lower its res to 2944 by 1656, while PS4 Pro goes down by a smaller margin to 2304 by 1296.
What the fuck?
These are the lower bounds we've seen on both sides, and it's scaling that only happens to such extremes when the GPU is being contested. Seemingly, anything that involves the CPU simply translates to a frame rate drop. Image quality is the main...
Okay, what the fuck happened here? Bethesda, get your shit together. Obviously, the Xbox can fucking handle this shit, right? Right? But they just touched on something. Everything that the CPU is going to touch is going to result in a frame drop. I'm sorry, but the CPU is still shit. It's what, one digit higher than the PS4 Pro? Probably 2 digit higher than the PS4 Pro. But no, it's not that. It's no. It's the game's fault, right? So let's go to another game, because obviously aren't we getting tired of watching this shit? Okay, here's a game, Halo 5, because every fucking fanboy just, as soon as you say something about the Xbox One X, Halo is fucking mentioned, right? So let's go ahead, let's take a look at fucking Halo.
The leap really is tremendous. But Halo 5 is well known for its dynamic resolution feature, and of course, this is fully active on Xbox One X. Just as before then, Halo 5 can adjust the X and Y axes independently, resulting in oddball values in the name of stability. This includes resolutions such as 2816 by 1584 and 3360 by 1890, as well as many others. From a normal viewing distance and during the heat of action, however, these drops are difficult to notice.
So, but Halo's the chosen one. It's the fucking chosen one for 4K, right? Why is it doing this? Why?
Hitting and maintaining 60 frames per second is a critical piece of the puzzle.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Thankfully, even with the massive jump in resolution, Halo 5's adaptive resolution feature remains just as effective as ever. During my time playing the game on Xbox One, I managed to play through a chunk of every single mission in the game, and never once did I encounter any actual GPU related drops in performance. Everything was smooth and stable, just as you would hope in each of these stages.
See, that's what happened. So in actuality, Microsoft understood that there's a limitation to this Xbox. So what did they do? They pumped out a patch that is not completely 4K. Meaning that they know if they want to keep 60 frames per second, they're going to have to limit the resolution. But Halo was the chosen one. 4K 60 frames. Hell, in the Scorpio edition, when you do the breakdown, it has a little scorpion on the side where Master Chief is riding it. But that's not marketing speak, right? They wouldn't just fucking lie to you, right?
Though usually at a number in between. Just like the PS4 Pro patch, Xbox One X support adds in a dynamic resolution scaler plus extras like ambient occlusion and bloom. But in the final comparison, how do the two stack up against each other? And how does the frame rate hold up?
How can you have a dynamic resolution scaler on a top-down game? How does that work?
First point to cover is an image quality comparison between Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. It's here Microsoft really has a significant advantage in pushing a 4K image, and it's the main plus point of playing Diablo 3 on Xbox One X.
But why do you have a dynamic resolution scaler for this game?
Which means both machines change their native resolutions based on rendering load. In PS4 Pro's case, that means a full 3840 by 2160 is only hit around interior areas, like the bar at New Tristram or small dungeons. But in practice, Sony's machine tends to run at lower numbers, while Xbox One X hits 4K almost perfectly throughout. Let's put this into example. Overlooking New Tristram right at the start with a new character, Xbox One X runs at 3840 by 2160, the full 4K experience, while PS4 Pro kicks off at 2880 by 1620. Put into perspective, that's a 77% increase in resolution on Xbox One X before even touching a button. Next up, running down towards New Tristram's gates, things start to change, and the resolution adapts on both sides. Here we're faced with our first taxing area, filled with enemies, physics-based objects, and geometry, forcing Xbox One X to make a rare slip below 4K, down to 3648 by 2052. It's a 10% drop in pixels for the machine, but it still compares well to the 2560 by 1440 on PS4 Pro in this particular spot. Moving to the centre of New Tristram, that number changes again, back to 3840 by 2160 on Xbox One X, while running at a lesser 3072 by 1728 on PS4 Pro. Likewise, for even more complex areas like Act 2's Chaldean Bazaar hub area, a comparison shows that 4K number sticking firmly on Xbox One X without any issue, whereas Pro hits 3328 by 1872. In summary then, visually there's very little to separate the two otherwise. This is a resolution standoff, and it does make a difference in image quality. It's roughly how the game bears out for both during Action 2. Pushing the engine with a screen filled with enemies, even in multiplayer co-op, it's a struggle to get Xbox One X to go below that maximum pixel count. Ironically, it's only that New Tristram gate area, a point within minutes of starting a new game, that really made the hardware struggle to hit 4K from my test so far. Of course, the intensity of effects work will ramp up during Nephilim Rift missions with high-level players. It's likely Xbox One X can be pushed harder, and that increases the chances of a drop below 4K. But as a demonstration of where the two consoles stand next to each other, Microsoft's machine clearly uses 3840 by 2160 as a baseline. It's the most consistent number, and anything under that is a deviation from the norm. By comparison, PS4 Pro rarely even hits this top resolution number, and it's here the power divide between the two sticks out. What about the visual settings then? Okay, Xbox One X is enhanced over a regular Xbox One, but ultimately it matches the Pro feature set. Screen space ambient occlusion is the main one, for example, and a comparison between Xbox One X and PS4 Pro shows a similar effect in the corners of the room. On PC, this is just an on-off toggle, and to be honest, it doesn't radically affect the look of the game in Diablo's dark dungeons, only in bright scenes like this. The enhanced bloom on Xbox One X has a bigger impact overall. Put into example, this again matches what we have on PS4 Pro, and any light points across the scene are nicely embellished. It's a neat touch, and means outside of resolution, there is parity between the two. I only had one issue with this Xbox One X playthrough in fact. Entering this room, the resolution suddenly and without warning dropped to 1080p, switching off ambient occlusion and bloom with it. It lasted until I left the building, almost as if a flag was switched off to force it to run like a regular Xbox One. It's a one-off glitch and I've never had any problems like it on PS4 Pro, but it's possibly something to watch out for.
Well, obviously I'm not going to count that room then. So aside from that, it does have dynamic scaling, and I'm guessing probably the reason why is because that beginning area. However, it should have been pushed to 1080p. It should have been pushed to 4K. I don't see why. I have no problem with this. I think that's running at 60, but I don't think they actually do a frame rate comparison. So again, close but no cigar.
This version varies its resolution on a per stage basis. It selects between two different resolutions, and at its best it runs at 3200 by 1800, offering a massive jump in image quality over any other version of the game. but in the other stages the resolution is dropped back to the same 1080p that we've seen on PS4. Well, maybe not exactly the same. You see, there's a scaling problem here. Zoom in on any line and you'll notice inconsistent steps along its run. The image is poorly scaled from 1080p to 4K in this mode, and the resulting image is kinda messy as a result. Still, this kinda seems like a bug and one that will hopefully be fixed in the future, and from a normal viewing distance, it's not a huge problem. Just a little distracting when you go from the super sharp 1800p stages back to the improperly scaled 1080p ones. Ultimately though, in terms of image quality, Xbox One X definitely has an advantage over the other versions. Lastly, we have the Nintendo Switch.
And we're not going to even touch the Switch. But at least you guys have higher resolutions on this one. Sadly it's still not 4K, it's only 1800p, but it's better than, you know, 1080, right? Right? Alright, now let's talk about Gears of War, because this is a second game. And I know, wow, this is taking a long time to finish this video, but I have to make sure to get all the videos down. So if somebody wants to write these videos down and see what the resolution is, and some fucking moronic Xbot tries to tell you, oh, these run at 4K, and you go, dynamic resolution is not 4K. Dynamic resolution is a compromise that your system, which is supposed to have no fucking compromises, have.
HDR and
let's go.
at 4K as well. But yes, shall we talk about resolution?
Yeah, so basically Gears of War 4 operates with two distinct modes. So yes, we get essentially a 4K version of the original game, which runs at a locked 30 frames per second, just like the original game. Difference being 4K resolution, 4K assets. Now, I actually had to download a 28 gig patch from my original Gears 4 install to get all of this new loveliness, and the game I think stands at something like 109 gigabytes now.
It's got to be the largest game I've downloaded on any console.
It's absolutely insane, but you are getting 4K textures, which were previously, I believe, only available on the PC version. Now these are available to console users too. So yes, you get an enhanced 4K presentation, 2160p confirmed. Details of the rendering specifics I think we'll leave to John for his analysis.
I think that does show the difference between Microsoft's approach to supported games and what we get on PS4 Pro. You know, the fact the patch actually added a lot more in terms of the sheer weight of the file.
Yeah, I mean, after all, Xbox One X does have an additional 4 gigs of RAM, and there's only a very small memory bump available to developers on PlayStation 4 Pro. So yeah, I guess it is great that the memory is actually being used in this title. But to return to what we were talking about earlier, in addition to the 4K 30 mode, there is, of course, the performance mode.
From what I've pixel counted, it is running at a straight 1920 by 1080. Quarter of the pixel output of that 4K mode. The big advantage, obviously, is that it's targeting 60 frames per second. I suppose now's as good a time as any to switch over and show the performance side of things. Shall we start with 4K 30? These are some stress test areas from the prologue leading up to the raid. I think this is some of the most intensive parts of the game. What we're getting is really a very dull 30 FPS line. There's not much to say about it at all.
Yep, it's completely locked, just like the Xbox One version of the game. Now, that did actually use dynamic resolution scaling, but it's using Unreal Engine 4's temporal anti-aliasing, which means it's actually really difficult to see any reduction in pixel count if it does occur, and I'm not sure it does here.
No, I took some screens, and what you get is a exact match for the frame output from the console. So yeah, it is native 4K as far as I can tell, and there is some temporal stuff. There is a motion blur effect which can make it difficult to pick out what's going on. Yeah, we'll look into that in more detail with the full analysis down the line.
Third-person shooter, dynamic resolution, mostly 4K, because obviously we can't see if there's any scaling down. Would I be happy with just saying this is 4K, but only 30 frames per second for a third-person shooter? I would. I would if they didn't say there is dynamic scaling, but we just can't find it. DigitalFoundry, this is your job. You are supposed to find these things. But, those microdollars must really fucking be paying the bills, because fuck that shit, right? So you have a choice with this game, which is funny as shit, right? You can have 4K, 30, 1080p, 60. In reality, that's what you're supposed to be able to probably get. And I'm not going to lie, that is a good thing. However, that totally goes against your uncompromised fucking thing. Yeah. English, what is it? That totally goes against the whole mantra, the whole marketing that this is an uncompromised, super powerful beast of a console. This beast of a console seems to have dynamic scaling in all of its games. If it's a beast, it does not need dynamic scaling at all. In fact, I'm not even going to show that one. No one cares about that one. How far along is this? This isn't even far along. And I think right here they're just talking about the PC the PC scaling, and I'm not even going to go into that. Let's go into the last game.
Okay, the first and main upgrade really is in resolution. Xbox One X now runs at 3200 by 1800, an exact 4 times increase over a base Xbox One's 900p. Okay, 1800p is still 70% of the pixels you need to hit 4K, but it passes a threshold in image quality to create a satisfying image. The pixel density is high enough to scale up well to Ultra HD TVs, and combined with Homefront the Revolution's temporal anti-aliasing, the results on Xbox One X are clear and smooth. Honestly, given the performance drops we saw on base Xbox One hardware, which I'll cover later in this video, I went in expecting something more conservative on Xbox One X, but actually it's a really great result.
It's a really great result, but it's not 4K. What you're trying to sell this console is 4K. Do you not get that? It's not 4K. Stop saying this then. Oh man, but I found this one funny. Check this out.
Clear, Xbox One X and PS4 Pro have the power, finally, to run this game at a frame rate the developers intended on console. There is one interesting wrinkle though. Even at 1440p, PS4 Pro is the only one of the 2 enhanced consoles to drop frames during firefights. This scene shows a few seconds at 29 FPS on Sony's machine, where by comparison, Xbox One X rides it out without any trouble.
This is what I found funny about this. This is how you know they're sucking Microsoft off so hard that they totally forgot about the frame dip they had a couple of seconds ago. It's like how do you account for this? Oh, we have a problem with PS4 Pro fucking hitting 29 fucking frames per second. Did you not see this frame dip here?
Xbox One X and PS4 Pro have the power, finally, to run this game at a frame
rate
the developers intended on console.
No, we didn't.
There is one interesting wrinkle though. Even at 1440p, PS4 Pro is the only one of the 2 enhanced consoles to drop frames during firefights. This scene shows a few seconds at 29 FPS on Sony's machine, where by comparison, Xbox One X rides it out without any trouble. It's a small nitpick and hard to tell just how much of a processing overload PS4 Pro has behind the scenes.
This is just fucking amazing. Like, oh, you can see it. You can see the shilling to the point where it's like, what are you even talking about? What are you talking about? Right? These are still fucking 30 fucking frames per second garbage fucking titles we're talking about here. So, to basically make this a shorter video, most of the Xbox One X games do not run 4K and do not run 60 frames per second. They're majority 30 frames per second, majority dynamic fucking scaling games, and there is a minority of games that actually hit 4K. They don't lock at 4K. DigitalFoundry is accepting money from Microsoft. They have totally fucking forgot that there are other cards outside of the 1080 Ti. And for some reason, some fucking glorious reason, they forgot that they had a PC audience. That's just fucking amazing. It's just fucking amazing.
The moment has finally arrived. Yes, I'm going to exclusively reveal the Project Scorpio specs in this video. But first of all, I want to emphasize how kind of unprecedented this all is. Now, usually I find out about new console specs from industry contacts, but this time, Microsoft actually invited me out to its Redmond campus to meet the architects of the system to talk through the specs.
The chip says 4K. Isn't just fucking amazing?
And to get the whole story there. Now, bearing in mind that Scorpio is going to be a Q4 console release, this is really, really early. In all of my years in the business, I've never seen anything like it. So let's talk about the heart of the system, the Scorpio engine, as it's known. This is the SoC, system on chip, at the heart of the console that contains all of the core hardware: CPU, GPU, memory controllers, audio block, and audio video media processors. And well, here it is in person. And well, this is actually an early production.
Look at this shit. Look at this shit. They spent money on DigitalFoundry. They spent money on DigitalFoundry, bruh. Come on, man. Come on, Digital. You sold your souls, guys. You used to... It's like this. I can understand maybe industry contacts might be biased, but you were literally invited out to Microsoft. Literally invited out to Microsoft. Because they wanted to make sure that you were going to be so goddamn nice to the fucking Xbox crowd so that they would fucking look up, spend $500 on a new console to make up for the mistake and the $500 they spent on the old console that had to connect. That's just sad. And no, I don't care about the PS4 Pro. The PS4 Pro is not even an afterthought in my brain. I believe it's not even worth the fucking upgrade it has. And that goes double for the Xbox One X. I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. But it's sad. This is just... It's sad. Anyway, guys. This is Guan Yu 007, and just let this image burn into your fucking brain. DigitalFoundry... You guys, you guys just fucking hate, you hate your old audience, don't you? You just fucking hate them, don't you? You took that money and you ran with it. And you know what? I'm gonna stop because I don't want to say anything that I'm gonna regret.